Hello, guys, ladies and gentlemen of the sweet science, which we all love and adore. Well, most of the time. Welcome to Champions of Champions Boxing Talk. Today I'm going to talk about two significant fights. Well, one that is really significant is obviously Keith Thurman v Danny Swift Garcia. The other is in the UK, David Haye v Tony Bellew. Now, first of all, let me just tell you guys, if any of you are into show business, i.e. acting, performance, directing, producing, then, or writing scripts, let me tell you something. There's been a lot of uproar about the press conferences that Tony Bellew and David Haye have had in the build-up to their fight. David Haye is so dismissive, disrespectful, horrible. You know, his persona is in a dark place at the moment. Tony Bellew's got a big mouth. He never knows when to shut it. He always upsets his opponents. Listen, they are not playing chess. Well, they're playing a form of chess, but it's a hurtful one. Let's just say, as Ricky Hatton says, it's not a tickling contest, is it? So, they have to sell pay-per-view numbers. Both these guys have to put food on the plate for their families. So what do? First of all, David Haye and Tony Bellew, in terms of appeal, shall we say, are quite popular in the UK. But they're not Mayweather and they're not Pacquiao. Like somebody said to me the other day, yeah, but you didn't get Manny and Floyd behaving that way before their big fight. Did that fight need promoting? Come on. You're talking about two all-time greats there. And it already had a 5-year build-up anyway. These guys have to make headlines, Haye and Bellew, and they're doing that. And it's an act. Of course there's a competitive edge. There has to be. And as my brother said, he made a good point yesterday. They are going in the ring to take each other's heads off. Nothing they can say in the press conference can be worse than that. Right? So, it's a performance. These guys are salesmen. They're marketing their product. Do you blame them? Did anybody watch Halloween and think the guy with the Michael Myers mask on was really a mass murderer? No, it's a movie. It's entertainment. So respect to both David Haye and Tony Bellew. And good thinking there, Jack Kenner, with that analogy of nothing worse in the press conference is going to match what's going to happen in the fight, which I'm going to come to now. Who wins this fight and why? Boxing is a strange sport, but I believe this fight in particular is straightforward. I have David Haye within 3 to 4 rounds. Why? Is it because he's big? Is it because he has more strength, more power, more speed? Certainly in, I believe, his combination punching when he gets in close. Or is he a better sharpshooter? Definitely there's more power, as I say. Are those the reasons? Yes, they're some of the reasons. Here's another problem, though. When's the last time you've seen Tony Bellew perform like Bernard Hopkins in his prime? I don't remember, to be honest with you. And if you do, I think it's in your imagination. When, I'm sure it's thurman. Knocked Tony Bellew out. So we have to look at it like this. If guys in the light heavyweight division and knocking you out, what is David Haye going to do? When David Haye lands, Tony Bellew will have to at least get up from the canvas and have a good chin to do it. And if his chin is lacking in any way, he could be out in one shot. Derek Chisora, right? Klitschko could not knock him out. That fight went 12 rounds. David Haye stopped Chisora. Did you watch Dylan White v Derek Chisora? The chin on that guy is staggering. David Haye finished the guy in 5 rounds. You telling me Tony Bellew has a stronger chin? I disagree. Here's the other problem. It's the style. David Haye is not a heavyweight that stands right in front of you throwing punches. He's what I think of, and quote to, Mr. Dwyer, he made a great, shall we say, description of what David Haye is. He's an ambush fighter. In other words, he doesn't telegraph when he's going to go in and make his shots count. So you're going to have Tony Bellew, who gets emotional and is not the best defensively. And he hasn't got a static heavyweight in front of him, which would be bad enough, to kind of predict what that heavyweight's going to do because it's so static and so in front. He's got David Haye, who moves around the ring. And David Haye, if you've noticed, since going up to heavyweight, he's very conservative with his punches, but he makes them count. Right? So, Bellew is not going to be in a slug fest, shall we say, at all. Even then, I would fancy David Haye, but David Haye does not slug. David Haye has a look at you from a distance. He's over there, then the next minute he's there, and before you know it, don't want to sound too corny, but the haymaker has landed. Right? Of course, people say, well, David Haye, he was well defeated by Klitschko. Very, didn't put the best performance on. Vladimir was perhaps one of the easiest wins of his career. But here's the thing. Vladimir Klitschko, when he doesn't want to get hit, he doesn't get hit, does he? Tyson Fury did not go in there throwing power punches from round 1 to round 6 to round 12. No, he didn't. He was very unusual in what he was doing in there. It was more of a mind games fight than an actual physical battle, wasn't it? Tyson Fury would throw a fast jab, then another jab, then do some crazy dance to impress the judges ringside and things like that, because Tyson Fury knows, if I go in power punching with this guy, he's going to see everything that I've got. But you see, Tony Bellew doesn't have that option. He doesn't have his size, obviously, so when they do tie up in the middle of the ring, David Haye, I believe, is going to be stronger. On Sky Sports last night, I can't recall who it was, but they said, does Tony Bellew do anything pound for pound better than David Haye? The answer was, we don't think so. So, the only thing, if Father Time catches David Haye somehow, that's the only way I see Bellew winning. And if he could somehow get to the mid to late rounds and be wearing David Haye down, if David Haye has some kind of stamina problems. But this is what we're hoping. He keeps referring to the Carl Thompson fight, Tony Bellew. But how long ago was that fight now? Experience helps in this life. Even with older fighters, you know why? They learn to conserve what they have more. So, is David Haye going to do the same mistakes against Tony Bellew that he did in Carl Thompson when he sort of gave everything he had to give early and then paid late? I don't think that's going to happen in this fight. So, the only advantage I give Tony Bellew is a mythical one, is one of hope that David Haye has less stamina, which he might have, but it might not matter, because even an old fighter can get the job done in 3 or 4 rounds, because the last thing you lose in the sport is your power. Ask George Foreman, who was the oldest heavyweight champion of all time, because he still had some of the old rusty tools in the tool bag. So I'm going with David Haye in this fight inside of 4 rounds. If it's competitive, though, if it's competitive, and I know people are going to say credit to Tony Bellew, I say credit to Tony Bellew if it's competitive. But we also have to question David Haye's future. If this fight is competitive, I'm telling you, David Haye needs to think about calling it a day, in my opinion. Because there are bigger and tougher fish, I'm sorry to say, than Tony Bellew, in my opinion. This division, you've got Anthony Joshua there. You've got Vladimir Klitschko still there. Who knows what may happen in that fight? Deontay Wilder is a bit of a swinger, and when I say that, I don't mean in clubs. I mean the way he fights. But he has that power, doesn't he? That game-changing power. So, if Tony Bellew's giving you a rough ride, it's time to put that thinking cap on and, consider, another career path. But that's how I think that fight will go. If you disagree or you see something I don't, feel free to comment on it down below. Danny Garcia and Keith One-Time Thurman. See, now I'm changing Keith One-Time Thurman because recently when he stepped up in competition, he's become more Keith sometimes than Keith one time. I mean, that in terms of knockout. I don't see Keith Thurman knocking Danny Garcia out. Some people do. I don't personally. What I do see is Keith Thurman putting an intelligent boxing performance on. Danny Garcia, and shout out to Be Real TV, I agree 100% with you on this. Danny Garcia is at his best when people are on the attack against him and he's able to counter. Throw punches in bunches. That's where Danny Garcia excels. You watch the Lucas Matisse fight. You watch when Amir Khan started getting, this belief that he was Roberto Duran, and the next minute he was on the canvas. Had Amir Khan, now I know it's like saying, if it was sunny in England, it'd be Spain. I know that. But if Amir Khan was able to stick to a disciplined game plan, he may have been able to beat Danny Garcia that night. But Amir Khan decided to become Roberto Duran. But he's not, is he? So Danny Garcia had opportunities to counter him. And he did. And the rest is history. I think Keith Thurman takes a better shot than Amir Khan. So he can have moments where he goes in there and shows his dominance to Danny Garcia. where he puts his alpha male there for just a few seconds, has an exchange. I wouldn't advise this. Has an exchange, and then boxes in the back foot again. We've seen this in a few recent Keith Thurman fights, haven't we? We've seen what Keith Thurman was like via Louis Collazo when he was hurt to the body. I think it was in the 7th or 8th round. Keith didn't suddenly start answering back like a maniac. He was on the back foot protecting. I know people say, oh, he's vulnerable to the body, but when he's hit Keith Thurman, an intelligent mechanism seems to switch on, and he becomes a boxer. He's more of a boxer now to me than he ever was, and he's becoming more and more that. That's why I'm going to say something here, and I know some of you are going to be disappointed. I don't think this will be a particularly entertaining fight, because Danny Garcia, he doesn't have the greatest foot speed. So that's why he likes people to attack. So he doesn't have to move to him, basically. If you've got Keith Thurman on the back foot, only coming forward now and then, and you've got Danny Garcia, whose foot speed cannot close the gaps, and he has no intention because that's not his style, how do you think then that the fight's going to look? I know these are two of the biggest names in boxing. That doesn't equal a great fight. We've seen that before, haven't we? Floyd, Manny. But you know what I mean. So, I believe Keith Thurman will land a knockdown in this fight, though. I think it's the first time that Danny Garcia in the welterweight division will hit the canvas. And here's another thing. Oh, Danny Garcia will win easy. Did he beat Lamont Peterson easy? Many believe he lost. Yours truly being one of them. Did he look great against the guy Haye when they fought? Many people thought Haye beat Danny Garcia. Yours truly being one of them. Then another fight that these two both have in common. Robert the Ghost Guerrero. I believe both men beat the Ghost. But Keith Thurman dropped the Ghost, and in my mind, even though he was hit at certain phases in the fight, and I think had to go to hospital because of an injury to, I think, the top of his head, Keith Thurman's win was more of a 9-3 with a knockdown in my book. Danny Garcia's was more of a 7-5 in my view, the Ghost. And this is the Ghost past his prime. So, styles make fights again, I know. But when you add all the dots together, and process it, to me, the answer seems to lead to a Keith Thurman victory on a unanimous decision. And will he be able to handle Danny's power? He's just handled Porter's power. He come through that fight. Tough guy. That's Sean Porter. Do you know, I believe Danny Garcia would have a better chance against Sean Porter for this reason. Sean Porter would come forward, sometimes in straight lines, and engage. Danny Garcia would not have to find him. Keith Thurman can be disciplined and make the counter-puncher, Mr. Garcia, seek, which he's not particularly great at. Even an old, past his prime, Eric Morales. What's Eric Morales? He's a warrior. So he gives you chances. So that's how I see it. And also, these guys, I believe, is doing the same. Mr. Garcia's father. He says all kinds of things, doesn't he? These two seem to be saying things to each other. Garcia's dad and Keith Thurman, that is, that to the wider audience seems implorable. Well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. But you will, won't you? Because there's something in your primitive psyche that likes the violence. And Keith Thurman, like Tony Bellew, and like David Haye, knows this. So he's selling it. And so's Danny's father. And Danny's sitting there so sweet and innocent, isn't he? All the way to the bank. Trust me, come the end of the night, Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman will respect each other as warriors and as brothers of the sport. And the same with David Haye and Tony Bellew. David Haye today is full of praise for Derek Chisora. And the Berlin Wall was rebuilt just to keep them apart before their fight. Look at the respect they have for each other now. It will be the same. These boxers are not monsters. They're salespeople. And they're people like the rest of us, just trying to make ends meet. So, David Haye, stoppage within 3-4 rounds. If it's competitive, the Haymaker needs to consider his future in the sport. And Keith Thurman with, I believe, a fairly comfortable decision victory v Danny Swift Garcia. On points, that is. So, thank you for listening to Champions of Champions Talk. And I'll be back as soon as possible. I'm out.